UFC 308 Topuria versus Holloway takes place this weekend, and I'm going to go through the entire card, starting with the early prelims, ending with the main events, giving my prediction and breakdown for every single fight on the card. And before I even get into the early prelim opener, this is stacked top to bottom. It's probably the card of the year. Great fights up and down the card. There's been a couple dropouts, so it has faltered in terms of quality a little bit. But even still, absolutely amazing card, and thank you for this card being in the Middle East. Otherwise, the UFC would not care about it at all, and they would put on an absolutely terrible card. So thank everything that this is taking place in the Middle East, so we can actually have a good UFC card, because the UFC actually cares about them, not us or the rest of the fan base around the world who actually have fighters in the UFC. It's all good, though. We're going to start straight away with the early prelim opener of Bruno Silva versus Ismail Nurdiev. I'm going to go with Ismail Nurdiev to start the card. Going to go with Ismail Nurdiev. I don't believe in Bruno Silva anymore. Listen, I know he was robbed by Weidman, but when I'm looking at Bruno Silva recently, I'm seeing a 35-year-old. Okay? I'm seeing Ismail Nurdiev, who's a bit more of a young up-and-comer now. He's not coming off the best regional record as of late in his career, okay? He really isn't. But he's been fighting at Brave, and there's a ton of good opponents at Brave. He hurt a guy in Marcin Bandel in their fight, a Polish dude, kind of an older dude, by the way. And he went in for like a, oh my God, this guy's hurt, I'm actually going to get him out of there and put together some momentum and go on a 3-fight win streak after he'd already beaten a 5-0 undefeated guy by KO in the first round and beaten a 12-3 fighter before that. But then he got caught going in, and then he got caught in an armbar after that, got dropped, hurt. Then he got put away by 16-1 Vadim Kutsi. These are good fighters. You know what I mean? They're solid fighters. They're in their prime. I think Kutsi was about 31 at the time, 16-1. Built his whole career into that moment. And Ismail Nurdiev is taking on a lot of this comp as a, I believe, 28-year-old. And he's just recently turned 28 in August as well. So he's got a lot of time left before his prime. And he's coming into this fight. He was supposed to be fighting earlier in April 2024 against Luis Cardo, which was interesting. He was expected to win that fight going into it. I think I'm going to take him to beat Bruno Silva. I've always thought Ismail Nurdiev was let go a little bit too soon from the UFC because he lost to Sean Brady, okay? That's not a bad loss in hindsight. You know, he beat Mikel Prazeres, who was 26-2 at the time, little short, stocky guy for the division. You may remember him as the guy who got destroyed by Shavkat Rakhmonov with a spinning wheel kick and then put away after that as well. He actually went on to win after that Shavkat Rakhmonov fight. There are some suspect losses for Ismail Nurdiev's regional career, but he's been in there with great comp, and he's come out, like, he hasn't lost since 2022. He hasn't had many fights since then. But he's had about 2 years, not really having many fights. I think that's a sign of a guy maybe growing into his prime. And I just don't know if I can trust Bruno Silva to win a fight anymore, guys. We're talking about welterweight skill here in Ismail Nurdiev. Moving up to middleweight. He's going to be a similar size to Bruno Silva anyway, who's not the biggest middleweight on the roster. Lost to Chris Weidman. And not only did he lose to Chris Weidman, here's something I need to mention about Bruno Silva's loss to... What am I doing with my picks, man? But I just feel like it's logical, but I'll just give it a shot, you know, guys. I used to be really great at these things for years and years and years. I was the best at one time, guys. But this year, I just can't get a good card of picks. I don't know what's... I think it's just... I don't know if anyone's been doing that good this year. But, he wasn't exactly doing good against Weidman. I know there were eye pokes involved, but the guy landed 4 strikes in round 1, got held against a cage. Then he got outlanded 45-19 in round 2. And then the eye poke situation happened in the 3rd round. I believe Weidman hit him with an eye poke earlier in the fight as well, and then was like jousting his fingers towards the eyes of Bruno Silva throughout the fight. But I just haven't seen Bruno Silva have an impressive performance since his loss to Alex Pereira, where he looked okay but lost and got outdone in that fight pretty clearly, but made it close. You know what I mean? He stayed competitive in the fight, took a ton of damage, and then he goes on to fight Gerald Meerschaert, gets dropped, put away. The Brad Tavares fight, scrappy fight, both guys going back and forth. He catches Brad Tavares in an exchange. Then Brendan Allen puts him down, knocks him down early in the fight on the feet, subs him, Shara Magomedov puts work on him on the feet, but he ends up getting takedowns and just kind of laying there. I don't see him being able to keep Ismail Nurdiev down here. I think Nurdiev might be a little bit slicker on the feet as a welterweight moving up here to middleweight. He's not going to be outsized too much. In fact, I think they're listed at the same height, and I think Ismail Nurdiev, his height on Tapology comes from the time when he was in the UFC, so I kind of trust it more than a regional guy being listed as a certain height. They got the same reach. I reckon I'm going to go with Ismail Nurdiev's welterweight skill. He's been out. He's been training. I'm trusting in Ismail Nurdiev to kick off the card, to be honest with you guys. I reckon he's going to get this one done. We move on. Up the card to another fight, which is Ibo Aslan versus Rafael Whittaker. This one's tricky to say as well. You never really know. Rafael Whittaker, number 1 ranked heavyweight on the regional scene in Brazil. But that's not saying much because he literally hasn't fought anyone good whatsoever. However, the guy's dynamic. He's explosive. He's fought at light heavyweight before, I believe. A lot of his fights, though, I'm just going to say this. It's almost like he's fighting in the size of a BKFC ring. Okay, these fights at Demo Fight. I've been doing research for this card, guys. A lot of it. These fights that he's been having at Demo Fight, very dynamic finisher, but he's taken some guys to decisions that weren't the best of performances. You know, he's taken certain guys that he shouldn't have into the second round, and some people that he's fought have got experience. He's got some nasty body kick KOs on his record against really tall and athletic looking heavyweights, but I mean, the last 2 fights, the guy's fought a 6-3 opponent and a 1-1 opponent, tried to get a booking on the Contender Series 3 times over, couldn't get the first 2. And then the UFC just said, forget it, we'll just bring you into the UFC. And here we've got his debut. I was watching his fight with Ivonilson Diaz, who was just a fat guy. He's 1-2, 25 years old, hasn't fought since other than a record that's ineligible in MMA because it's now a no contest. Fought in other weird rule set fights against Lucas Nascimento that also didn't count towards his record. I just don't see him. After watching that performance, he had no countering ability. The guy was being somewhat aggressive with him and throwing like really terrible looking shots, by the way. And Rafael Whittaker just kind of covered up and let him work on him. And eventually the black dude, the fat guy, the flat black guy, just gassed out. And then Rafael Whittaker walked in. The guy had no like reaction time whatsoever. And he was like sweating and breathing heavy and had already used up all of his energy in about 4 minutes. And Rafael Whittaker just hit him with a nasty spinning elbow. It was a really nasty KO, to be fair to him. He does have some wicked looking KOs on his record. But I'm just thinking, dude, Ibo Aslan's actually kind of good. I hate MMA predicting. I hate my life. I hate everything. Because how can I say that? How can I say that? He had a good win on the Contender Series. But other than that, he's really fought nobody. He lost to Anton Turkalj the first time. Beat him in the rematch, which happened in the UFC. It was a decent scrap. Anton Turkalj is terrible. Can he be hit that many times by a guy like Rafael Whittaker? Whittaker looked bad in one performance that I've seen of his. Other than that, he's looked pretty good. He was supposed to be fighting at light heavyweight on the Contender Series. So he's had a lot of time to prepare for this. In September, he was supposed to fight. Now he's been pushed back to October, brought straight into the UFC. This is a dream scenario for him. He's 6'4". He's rangy, powerful, athletic. Ibo Aslan was getting cracked on the chin by Anton Turkalj, or Turkali, however you pronounce his name, even though there's no I in it, there's a J. God. Get English. Come on. Maybe Whittaker will beat him. I know Ibo Aslan has had a fight in the UFC and beaten the great Anton Turkali. But he got hit a lot in that fight. There's a reason it was given a fight of the night bonus. And it's because Takali landed quite a few shots. Like, he kept the first round extremely competitive. I'm going to check back on the stats of that first round because I was watching it the other day. But I'm pretty sure the first round was quite... Anton Takali outlanded him in the first round. Landed 65% of his shots to the head. Aslan had a great second round. The third round was looking quite even. Ibo Aslan stuffed a lot of the takedowns. I don't see, however you pronounce this guy's name, getting a takedown here, even though he has got really good Brazilian jiu-jitsu. He's a big dude. He's in his prime. Quiquera. Watched a lot of his fights. Nasty body kicks. Really vicious body kicks. I might go with him over Ibo Aslan. I'm going to go against Ibo Aslan here. And I'm going to pick Rafael Quiquera. Big, heavy dude. Powerful, athletic, in shape. Ready for a light heavyweight bout. I reckon he'll get this one done. Powerful dude. If Anton Turkalj is landing that many shots on you, if this guy lands half of those amounts of shots, Ibo Aslan's probably going to get put away. So, I'm actually not going to... I just sort of criticize this guy off one bad performance that I saw of his. And he's had some other weird ones, but this dude's got flying knee KOs. Could be looking at a Johnny Walker situation, but he's got flying knee KOs, big body kick finishes, spinning elbow, as I said before. Dynamic finisher here. And he's got the BJJ as well. I'm going to go with Rafael Quiquera. Prepared for light heavyweight, 6'4", big dude. Probably going to look a lot bigger than Ibo Aslan. And Aslan was getting tagged a lot by Turkalj, who I don't think is in any way technically good as a fighter whatsoever. So I'm going to go with Quiqueras. Getting it done, catching him at some point in the fight and putting him away. We move on to another fight up the card, which is Farid Basharat versus Victor Hugo. Who knows? Is there a point in trying to speak logic into this? I think I'm going to go with Farid Basharat because I was very unimpressed with Victor Hugo's last performance. He has looked good from what we've seen from him so far, and he got a really nasty sub on the Contender Series. I think he went for it a few times as well, and he got it the second time. Knee bar in the fight over a good opponent. But Farid Basharat has been proven. And he's had a lot of fights in the UFC. And again, I didn't like Victor Hugo's last performance against Pedro Falcao. I thought he spent too much time getting controlled. He stuffed a lot of takedowns, and he has got really good takedown defense, but I think he could have been busier on the feet in moments. He won the fight clearly. But Farid Basharat mixes it up well. He strikes very well. I don't mind his wins. The guy has a win over Taylor Lapulus. Lapulus has been a pretty tough out for pretty much everyone that he's fought in the UFC. That was a reasonably competitive fight, I understand, but Taylor Lapulus is pretty good. He just beat Vince Morales clearly, dominantly. Beat Cody Stamann dominantly, clearly. Cowlin Loughran dominantly, clearly. Not the best of names, but he's putting together consistent wins in the UFC. I think I'm going to have to side with Farid Basharat here over Victor Hugo. He mixes things up well. I know that Javid kind of got a little bit, into a not so great performance against Victor Henry. But I think Farid's going to keep it going. I think Farid's going to keep momentum going. Damon Blackshear's a great win. He had a great performance against Mario Batista, who, although we all hate, is pretty good. He's ranked level at least and wasn't getting destroyed by Aldo in round one. Had a decent round one for himself on the feet. So I'm actually going to go with Farid Basharat here. I think he's a bit more well-rounded. And I reckon he'll get it done, chaining things together a bit better than Victor Hugo, who seems to be a bit more of like a striker with great takedown defense and some ability to jump for a submission. But yeah, I'm going to go with Farid. I trust he's maybe going to be a bit better trained. We move on. Kennedy Nzechukwu versus not Justin Taffer. Kennedy Nzechukwu versus, his name is Charles Barnett, I believe his name is. Or Chris Barnett, sorry. How could I forget Chris Barnett? I am going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu. I do think all heavyweights are just fat people if they're outside the rankings. Chris Barnett is quite dynamic. Like, eventually, sometimes he'll get a body kick up there to his head height on some of these heavyweights, and you'll be like, whoa, watch out. This guy is crazy dynamic. I just don't see him winning this one. I think that Kennedy Nzechukwu is going to get this one done. I'm looking at Chris Barnett's career, and although he's got some funny looking wins, like, oh my God, look what he did to Gian Vellante, and wow, did you see that performance where he kind of pulled off an upset win over Jake Collier? Because Jake Collier was like on his way to beating Chris Barnett, and then he kind of turned the tables, ended up in a good position and got a ground and pound finish. Lost to Martin Bade. Like, this is Kennedy Nzechukwu. And although he is a bit chinny at times, there's been other times where he's just taken shots like nobody's business, like against Allberg. And then there's been shots where Daton Young doesn't even really land on him and he goes out. So you never really know with his chin. But I've got to imagine that without the weight cut, his chin might be a little better off. And I think he's going to be able to just prod and poke and kick at range at Chris Barnett. And I reckon he'll get this one done. I think he could even grapple here and just not be morbidly obese and therefore be a bit better in the scramble positions. Like, the guy has been out grappling people before. Paul Craig finished him in their fight, but in moments of that, he was getting a better in the grappling of a guy like Paul Craig. And he's had other performances where he showed off his grappling. Like, he looked good in the grappling exchanges against Kutalaba, landed a big knee to the head of him. I'm actually going to go with, I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu to beat Chris Barnett. Lost to Ben Rothwell in MMA. I know he's a huge dude. And Barnett was landing in that fight, but I'm looking at Barnett. I'm seeing a finish loss to Ben Rothwell. He got finished by Martin Bade legally, but they overturned it to a decision, technical, unanimous. He did get finished to side of the ear shots. Sometimes they call back of the head shots. If you're a big star, they don't. Like, back of the head shots to stars get called out. If you're a star throwing back of the head shots, absolutely fine by the company. Seems to be the trend. I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu here. The guy's been KO'd in kickboxing, finished by Yoel Romero in a grappling match, been knocked out a few times. Before that on the regional scene, Alex Nicholson, Hyung Man Myung, beat him on the Road FC. I thought it was the Road to UFC, Road FC. Doctor stoppage, 2 more decision losses in his career, lost early on in his career. Beat some schmucks here and there. Some guys with some experience, but I'm not going to side with Chris Barnett. I'm not. And plus, there's a few other things that you got to take into consideration here as well. The guy hasn't fought in a very long time. Last time he fought was in September of 2022. He's been out for over 2 years. Was supposed to have a bunch of fights that have all fallen through. Was supposed to fight Chase Sherman in April of 2023. That didn't end up happening. Barnett withdrew from that fight. Then you look at his fight with Mo Usman that was supposed to happen. Barnett withdrew from that fight. Then you look at his fight with Aldo Cortez Acosta, which was supposed to happen in October. Cortez got injured and pulled out of that fight, and it didn't end up happening. Now he was supposed to fight Junior Tafa. That didn't end up happening, and now he's fighting Kennedy Nzechukwu. Barnett pulled out of the Junior fight because of his house getting hit by a tornado. He fell over in the kitchen. Yeah, I mean, insurance fraud. I don't know. A lot's going on with Barnett. And I think it has something to do with the fact that you shouldn't be morbidly obese while training mixed martial arts. I'm going to go with Kennedy Nzechukwu. I think it will take an athletic heavyweight with some pop behind his shots to put away Kennedy Nzechukwu. So I'm going to pick him to win this one. We move on. Up the card to another fight. And plus, Chris Barnett is how old at this point in his career? 38. 5'9" at heavyweight. Like, fuck off, fatty. We move on to another fight, which is, I guess we'll go Rinat Fakretinov versus Carlos Leal. I've had a few people messaging me about the fact that Carlos Leal is on roids. He's a very dynamic finisher, has a ton of finishing potential in fights, has been fighting at the PFL. He's fought in other respectable promotions as well before in his career. He fought Sadibou Sai twice. For a second time split decision, very close fight. First time he lost a little bit clearer than that as well. Sadibou Sai trains at Extreme Couture. Strickland's done a lot of work with him before in his career. Really good fighter, really rangy. Sort of leaving his prime a little bit. Big dude, 6'3", great striker. I think a little bit underrated in his career. He lost to Magomed Karimov, got guillotined in that fight. Other than that, he injured himself in the fight after that. But now he's back on a win with a big KO. Sadibou Sai is good. Carlos Leal was preparing for a fight leading up to this as well. He's preparing for a fight with Darmanov, which was October 22nd. And now he's been brought into this fight instead. It's hard to pick against Rinat Fakretinov, and I want to tell you why. Although Rinat Fakretinov has shown moments where you're like, that Dalby fight was way too close for this guy to be a legitimate prospect. You got to smoke Dalby. But I keep saying that people have got to smoke Dalby, and people keep not smoking Dalby. So I'm starting to think that Dalby's actually pretty good, because he beat Gabriel, the brother of... Who did Dalby beat recently? Gabriel. His name was Gabriel. And his brother's name is someone that lost to Benoit Saint Denis. Gabriel Bonfirm. Brother of Ishmael Bonfirm. And he ended up breaking him and beating him. And then before that, he beat Muslim Salikov. And, he's been on a 4-fight win streak leading into that Rinat Fakretinov fight. Which I did think Rinat won. Although Dalby did make it close. I do like what Rinat did to Brian Battle. I really like what Rinat did to Brian Battle. And I think he'll be able to get his own way here. Rinat is someone where you need a full training camp in preparation for him. If you don't have that, you're going to be in for some trouble. You don't end up, I'm just going to take on this regional guy for a fight, in LFA or wherever this fight was supposed to take place in. Let me check. This is supposed to be UAE Warriors against Eric Darmanov, who's 13-7. Leal was 97% rated to win that fight. I think you need a full training camp for a guy like Rinat, whereas Rinat doesn't need a full training camp for you. He's going to do what he does and see how you handle it. I'm going to go over Rinat Fakretinov getting this one done by decision or submission. Maybe a tough fought fight, maybe some danger in the first round, but I'm going to trust in Rinat to get this one done. We move on to another fight on the card, which is Abus Magomedov versus Bruno Ferreira. This is a tricky one, yet again, because Bruno Ferreira at times got a little too sloppy for my liking against Dustin Stoltzfus. He got the win and he got a really nasty finish. But man, they were both puffing air by the end of the first round. It was a really, really close fight. Well, it wasn't really a close fight, but both guys were landing back and forth. Bruno Ferreira was definitely getting the better of it. Before that, he put out Phil Hawes, but who hasn't? Welcome to the club. I did that last weekend. My nan did it the weekend before that. He's lost in Sultan Ruzaboev, who's good, but we find out not that good. But he's a powerful dude, puts out Gregory Rodriguez, puts out a bunch of people on his way to the UFC, puts out the guy on the Contender Series to get his contract in the UFC. Abus Magomedov fought Baralho to a decision. It wasn't too impressive from Baralho, but he won the fight. Abus Magomedov kind of got carried towards the end of that fight as well, because I think Baralho could have finished him, but he didn't end up doing it. Strickland's not an embarrassing loss in hindsight, is it? Wale Alves he beat, but he did not look too amazing against Wale Alves. Abus Magomedov's one of those weird ones because he's physically very capable. And he did use takedowns to beat Wale Alves. I don't think that's going to be an option for him here. I reckon he'll end up in a gunfight with Bruno Ferreira. And who's going to win a gunfight between the two of them? Baralho put him down in their fight and then kind of carried him to a decision. Same way he did to Cannonier. Maybe the finishing instincts of Baralho aren't quite fighting nerd-esque. We may be finding out as time goes on. But he did smoke Dustin Stoltzfus, and he has a bunch of good wins before he came to the UFC. What are we talking about here? It's a tricky one. I'm going to just say Bruno Ferreira has more dog in him. Let's face it. Listen, they're both capable of finishing each other. I'm going to go with Bruno Ferreira because in my mind, I'm thinking if it all goes good for either of them, each of them are going to have a chance to win. If it starts going bad for either of them, who do I trust to dig down and dig deep and get this win out of the pocket or pull this win out from behind or, win this one in a slugfest if it goes into the second and third round and they're still swinging at each other? Who's going to push when the going gets tough? And I'm going to trust in Bruno Ferreira to get that one done. So I'm going to say that it's a little bit of a firefight early with some patience. Both guys are landing some good shots on each other. But then Bruno Ferreira will start to get some momentum as the fight goes on. And I'm going to lean towards Bruno Ferreira. Some people just don't have that in them to continue. So I'm going to go with Bruno Ferreira over Abus Magomedov. He's too westernized of a Dagestani. A little bit too soy. We move on. Up the card, Saeed Nurmagomedov versus Daniel Santos. This is a good fight. Said Nurmagomedov, contrary to his second name, which is usually a guaranteed win, it seems, not part of the family. Well, he's from the area, so he is part of the family. Just saying. Look it up. Not even trying to be funny there. So, he's not a direct member of the family, but he's part of the family. If you're within a few mile radius of that area, you're part of the fucking family. Okay? The guy lost to Jonathan Martinez. No embarrassment there. Jonathan Martinez is a warrior. He actually gave Aldo a good fight and stood there and banged with Aldo and had a decent performance in... Well, he didn't. He got pieced up, didn't he? But, you know, he had some moments against Aldo in that fight. And he looked good against Said Nurmagomedov. And sometimes Said does slow down in fights. But is Daniel Santos the guy to get it done against him? You know, the guy gets hurt in fights. We were calling him like the Brazilian Charles or the bantamweight Charles Oliveira. Sorry, not the Brazilian one. Who's Oliveira then? Because he got hurt against John Castaneda. And he bounced back and it was a scrap back and forth and he got it done. Then he beat Johnny Munoz. It's Johnny Munoz. You know? He got takedowns in that fight to ease his way through that fight. Ended up getting a good decision, hurting Johnny Munoz in some moments and dominating him, I believe, in the second round. I'm going to go with Said Nurmagomedov. A little bit more well-rounded, very versatile on the feet, good striker, good on the back foot as well. Santos likes to pressure at times. Said Nurmagomedov can fight off the back foot pretty well. Got a good submission game. Daniel Santos sometimes does just sort of like fall into takedowns. After he's thrown in the pocket, he'll kind of fall into a takedown. Said Nurmagomedov's got a really nasty guillotine that he can latch up. We've seen that from him. I believe we saw that from him against Cody Stamann. And I think he actually has another win from that same technique. I'm going to check it right now to see which one that was. Muin Gafarov, he just caught him in the very same technique, you know, caught him with that guillotine that he's known for. I think he did the same thing to Sadyakub Kakramanov, who's really good. Sadyakub is really good. And he was having a really good fight against Said, but you can't make a mistake against Said Nurmagomedov. I'm going to side with Said, getting this one done. Probably a guillotine. Probably they get scrappy. He could catch him. And see Daniel trying to get a takedown to sort of get himself in on the inside and maybe making a mistake and getting his neck tied up. Or maybe we could see Said just get a nice looking TKO over him here because he is quite hittable when he does go down. That's why we were calling him the bantamweight Oliveira. So I'm actually going to go with Said Nurmagomedov here. We move on. Myktybek Orolbai versus Mateusz Rebecki. Shout out Orolbai, doing it for the woolly mammoths back home. I think you've got to go with Myktybek Orolbai over Mateusz Rebecki. The Carlos Diego Ferreira fight honestly, Carlos Diego Ferreira is a really difficult fight for a lot of guys at lightweight. So I'm not going to take too much away from him, but he did take a ton of damage in that fight with Carlos Diego Ferreira, and it was like a fight that kind of showed us his level. You know, he does have good power. He's put down some semi-decent fighters. Loic Radzhabov finished Roosevelt Roberts very easily into the fight, but he just kind of overpowered Roosevelt Roberts, who is just malnourished and doesn't belong there, or in the UFC. But had an okay performance against Ludwig Klein. Don't get it twisted, but Klein's not really much of a smush and destroy. He likes to try and be his own technical fighter on the feet. Nick Fiore, going to a decision with him. Nick Fiore is absolute garbage. That needs to be mentioned. He's actually been winning some of his fights on the regional scene, but he's right back to fighting 12-10 Gustavo Franca and 20-13 Saul Almeida. Right back where he belongs, this guy. I'm going to side with Myktybek Orolbai over Mateusz Rebecki. I think he can push more when the going gets tough. You know, and you've got to consider where this fight is in Abu Dhabi, where I know it's, you know, the closer to the end of the year, but they say it gets humid in there, it gets hot. You know, I think it's going to value the guys that can dig deep a lot of the time. I'm going to go with Myktybek Orolbai. He pushes. He keeps going for takedowns. Even if he gets cracked, he'll shoot in. He'll grind for a takedown. We saw him put a pace on We saw him put a pace on Uros Medic after being hurt early in their fight. Upper division, I believe, at welterweight on short notice. He puts a pace on him. He breaks him as the fight goes on. And since then, great win over Elves Brenner. Looked good on the feet. There are chances for Mateusz Rebecki to win this one, but I'm going to trust the guy that digs deep a little bit more. I think they're both pretty good for the first round and a half. But then who do I think is going to be more good for the second half of this fight? Because odds are one of them isn't going to completely dominate it early. It's probably going to be a bit back and forth. But I know I can maybe bet more likely on one of them dominating the second half of this fight. So I'm going to go with Myktybek Orolbai, getting this one done over Mateusz Rebecki. Looking forward to seeing if he can get this one done, because he'll probably get like a good test of like a Bobby Green or a Jalen Turner or maybe a Drew Dober fight himself. Like, there's a lot of fun fights that are going to be happening for him. He's got a bit of a following purely because he looks downs. Or he looks like he's from the prehistoric era. So there's going to be some following for him. And if he gets a good finish here, there's definitely going to be even more of it. I'm going to go Myktybek Orolbai. Looking forward to seeing what's next for him in his career if he does get past the test of Rebecki, who's very good. But I just don't see him gritting down and digging deep in this fight. We move on. Shara Magomedov versus Armen Petrosyan. Now, I will one day pick against Shara Magomedov. I'm sure a lot of you think the same thing about Shara Magomedov. 14-0, surname looks legit, hideous, inbred. This guy's ticking all the boxes to be a future contender. But he is kind of mid in moments. Like, he is good and his striking is really good. I'm just not seeing the finishing potential that I need to see from him so far in his career. I need to see him putting away more people that aren't, was it Tricoli, who literally was just a heavy bag for him, walking forwards menacingly in that fight, and then eventually got finished in the third round. I thought that took a little bit long for Shara Magomedov to get that win, and Tricoli took that fight on short notice as well. He was supposed to fight Petrosyan, then he was supposed to fight Myktybek, and then eventually Tricoli stepped in and took the fight and got finished. Aleksandar fight, he won. Got a ton of publicity for it. Thousands of likes. Future champion, everyone's saying. Thought he looked kind of mid, to be honest with you. Thought he didn't look good whatsoever. Like, he had moments and he was definitely outstriking Aleksandar, but his striking defense was, in moments, kind of bad. Getting caught on the chin quite often. Pushed back a lot. Hard to hold his ground. The problem I have with this matchup with Armen Petrosyan is Petrosyan don't track you down and bully you moving forward. He doesn't mix in grappling and he's going to be able to hold down Shara Magomedov. He will probably tit for tat at range. Let's face it, that's Armen Petrosyan's game so far in his career. And it works against some opponents, you know, like he did beat Christian Leroy Duncan, who I thought was a pretty good prospect and probably still is going to be a pretty good prospect based on his recent performances. But Christian Leroy Duncan was just doing too much in that fight. Wheel kicks, jumping knees, needed to simple it up a little bit, but he didn't. A little bit too late in that fight. Petrosyan ended up outpointing him. Beat AJ Dobson. That fight was a little too close for my liking. For example, I think Shara Magomedov would outnumber AJ Dobson in the hundreds. You know what I mean? Like, I think he would really do a number on AJ Dobson. And if you look at the numbers in that fight between Shara Magomedov and Armen Petrosyan and AJ Dobson, Armen outlanded him, but the fight was competitive and AJ Dobson stayed in the fight. I don't think it would be as competitive against Shara Magomedov. I think he would have chewed him up and destroyed him in that fight a little bit easier. A little bit like how he did Tricoli. I think that's that level of comp. I'm going to go with Shara Magomedov. This is going to be a tit-for-tat at range fight that Armen Petrosyan loves to do. He's going to be tapping at low kicks at range. And then there's another thing that needs to come into equation in this fight, which is probably won't be much grappling. And Armen Petrosyan maybe has the shortest arms, but so does Shara. Like, a lot of these guys from the Caucasus don't really have long arms at all, do they? But Shara is normally outreached by his opponents. 73 inches of reach at 6'2". That's kind of embarrassing. You know, Armen Petrosyan is listed at 6'3". He's not. He's 6'1". 71 inches of reach. McGregor's outreaching him. I'm pretty sure McGregor's reach is like 72 inches of reach, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to double check that right now. McGregor's like 5'8", 5'9". I know McGregor's got long arms, but at lightweight, he's not like outreaching everyone. You know, there are lightweights with longer reach than McGregor. He's got a 74-inch reach, sorry. Conor McGregor's got a 74-inch reach at 5'8". Armen Petrosyan is probably a tall 6'1", close to 6'2". 71 inches of reach. I think that's going to be a problem if you're playing that tit-for-tat game with Shara Magomedov. Giving him range and playing the kick game at range where nothing's really to knock you out and everything's to score points. That sounds like a Shara Magomedov dream matchup. You know who I think would beat Shara Magomedov? Like a Bo Nickel. Like a good, solid grappler. Someone in the rankings that can grapple as like an Anthony Hernandez, I reckon would easily beat Shara Magomedov. These are the matchups that I want to see him against. But it feels like the UFC is kind of laying him up over and over again. You know, a lot of people give Bo Nickel shit for, God, another layup for Bo Nickel. The guy's nowhere near as experienced as Shara Magomedov. Shara Magomedov was what, 10-0 before he got to the UFC, and he had a bunch of fights in like modified rules MMA as well that didn't even count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on his record, 15-0 in MMA bouts, but some of them didn't have elbows allowed, so they weren't counted as pro fights, I think. Even though PFL's fights are counted as pro fights and they're not fucking elbows allowed, so a little bit of a weird one, but I'm going to go Shara Magomedov here. Getting it done by decision. We move on. Magomed Ankalaev versus Aleksandar Rakic. No, not that fight yet. The list of fights is all over the place. Geoff Neal versus Rafael dos Anjos. Let's do this one next. I'm looking at 3 different orders of the fights right now. I'm going with Geoff Neal because it's Rafael dos Anjos in 2024. A lot of times you can't do that, I know, because UFC is very low-level athletes. They're not the best in the world at anything. They're just the only ones trying a lot of the time. Rafael dos Anjos, 39 years old, fighting at welterweight at 5'8", probably close to 5'9", 70 inches of reach. Going to be a little bit out-muscled here. And if you give Geoff Neal the imposing stature in a fight, bro, this guy can nearly topple people who have intimidation factors, like presence over him in the octagon. You know, he had a really close fight with Ian Gary. Very close fight in his last fight. Shavkat, he gave a scrap to. You know, I think it was very dominant to Shavkat, but he did give a scrap to him. I thought it was clear Shavkat, but he wobbled him at one point in the fight. As I contradict myself for the 3rd time, talking about the Shavkat-Geoff Neal fight. It was competitive, but Shavkat dominated, no. But it was a competitive fight. He finished Luque, left him never the same, if we're being honest. Left Luque never the same after that fight. And I kind of saw that coming as well. The Santiago Ponzinibbio fight was quite close, though. So this is the type of thing that worries me because the Neil Magny fight is a loss. How were you losing that? And Geoff Neal's the type of fighter to complain about fighter pay and then fight once a year. So it's kind of difficult. But he's close to his prime. 34 years of age. Not too many miles on the clock. Just closed the distance well on Ian Gary in moments. Made it close. One judge gave him the scorecard. He's going to be able to outmuscle Rafael dos Anjos. Listen, put it this way. Does dos Anjos take down Geoff Neal? Belal Muhammad couldn't. Belal Muhammad lost to Geoff Neal. Geoff Neal put it on Belal Muhammad. Stuffed all his takedowns. I don't see Rafael dos Anjos being able to out-grapple Geoff Neal in any way. What's Rafael dos Anjos' next plan of attack going to be in this matchup when you think about it? It's probably going to be him trying to, well, I can't out-grapple him. I'll just try and fight in the pocket. Ain't going to be popping a jab and floating around at range like Ian Gary, trying to time a knee up the middle as Geoff Neal closes the distance. No. He's going to be trudging forward like Luque and trying to fight in the pocket and trade with Geoff Neal and hope to get the better of it. Maybe like out-voluming him in the exchanges. I don't see that going well for him. I think Geoff Neal's going to win this fight in all areas. And I'll probably say he's going to get a TKO win if dos Anjos continues to take a bit too much damage here. So I'll say 2nd round TKO for Geoff Neal. Potentially in the 1st, though. I can see a real nasty finish and maybe this being the end of Rafael dos Anjos. But I get why RDA took it. He's a gamer. He fights nothing but tough opponents. Says yes to everyone. And if he wins, he is in the rankings at welterweight and probably looking for a name. But I just got Geoff Neal. I got Geoff Neal getting this done by TKO in vicious fashion. We move on. Magomed Ankalaev versus Aleksandar Rakic. You guys, Aleksandar Rakic is designed to beat Magomed Ankalaev. And Krylov had a really good fight with Ankalaev. And Blachowicz is quite old, and he had a really good fight with Ankalaev, but he also had a really good fight with Ferreira. People forget, man. Oh! No. No. No, I can't. No. No. I'm not going to pick him. No, I'm not going with Rakic. I'm going with Ankalaev. His pressure is good. It's sensible. He will push up against the cage in neither thigh. He will do that to win, if that's what it comes to. Not saying Rakic won't. Trust me, Rakic is probably guilty of the same things that... This is so tempting, though. You know how good Rakic is. And Yuri goofied him. Rakic is probably thinking, oh, a couple more low kicks, this guy's done. Nope. Yuri just takes them all. Doesn't stop taking them. But man, Rakic is so good. He's so technically good at light heavyweight. He might be one of the more technically complete light heavyweights. That's not a hot take. Like, he might be one of the most in terms of his all-round game. Before he ended up kicking Jan Blachowicz and busting his ACL out, he had him down for the whole second round. Ankalaev ain't have Jan Blachowicz down early in the fight. Took him waiting for Jan to get tired. Took him down in the 4th round. But people forget, man. If Ankalaev's not liking what he's seeing, he will push up against the cage. And they're in Abu Dhabi. They want him to win. I don't know why, but the UFC wants him as champs. There won't be separations here like there was for Ihor Potieria against Cesar Almeida. I'm going to go with Ankalaev. I think he'll be able to, like, tricky his way to win this fight. He'll trick it in. He'll mix it up. He'll keep it even with Rakic. Rakic will look more dynamic, but Ankalaev may be just as effective in terms of who's landing, and the numbers will be quite similar. And I think we're going to see a lot of Ankalaev, like Rakic showing off great takedown defense, but you're still not off the cage. You know what I mean? Oh, ended around. Rakic defends that takedown really well, but Rakic is kneeing him in the thigh and picking him up and taking him down a bit. And Rakic is right back up, but he took a knee to the body there, and Ankalaev threw a couple punches in the clinch. I think it's going to be one of those ones. I think it's going to be a stinky performance by Ankalaev with a decision 29-28. But I think he'll wear on Rakic as the fight goes on, and his boxing will eventually start to work for him a bit more. He pressures forward well. Rakic is dangerous though, man. So there might be some good underdog money here. What are the odds? Because the odds shouldn't be that crazy. I bet you they are, because his Ankalaev's name ends in a V. Yeah, they're crazy. So the odds are begging for a Rakic underdog money, to be honest with you. They really are. The odds are desperately begging for some Rakic underdog money. Because, I mean, Ankalaev's nearly a 4-1 favourite. So he should be like a 2-1 favourite at most. That's what I would say. But I'm saying Ankalaev gets this done. I mean, it goes, even though he lost to Paul Craig, it says something that a guy hasn't lost despite facing this much light heavyweights. This many light heavyweights. So I'm going to go with Ankalaev. And then you look at the Ozdemir fight for Rakic and you're like, is he that good really? I know he improved since then massively, but Yuri's legs are there to chew up. Pereira's low kicks devastated him with only a few of them. Rakic was chewing up his legs, but that many and nothing happened. That many punches to the chin, now it happened. At what point do we start to think that Rakic is just incapable of finishing someone? Ankalaev isn't incapable of finishing someone. Even though people, he's boring, he's this, he's that, he's got heat in his hands. You know? I'm going to go with Ankalaev. 29-28 decision. Very eerily similar to the Nikita Krylov performance that he had not that long ago, which was a 29-28 grueling, tough decision for him. So I'm going to say that's what happens with Ankalaev. And that's probably the best thing, because I think that'll tempt Pereira into being more open to the fight, because he'll be like, oh, well, Rakic did that good. He landed low kicks. I'll land low kicks. You know what I mean? So that'll probably coax that fight into happening even more, even if Ankalaev does stink up the place. I'll go Ankalaev decision. We move on. Dan Ige versus Lerone Murphy. I'm going to have to go with Lerone Murphy. Not because he's from the UK. Trust me, that's not why I'm picking him here. I think Lerone Murphy's type of fighter is the type of fighter to beat Dan Ige. Wild fighters are typically going to lose to Ige. Diego Lopez, but he's so good he still gets it done, even though Ige took it on very short notice and Lopez had to make weight like 3 times before that fight. I get it. But that wild style of fighter falls right into Ige's plan. You know who else is unlikely to beat Ige? Not that great grappler. Bryce Mitchell. You know what I mean? Gets it done still, though. This is saying something, that the people that I'm thinking are the good matchups for Ige are still somewhat getting it done against him en masse. And you look through Ige's career and you think, okay, the Josh Emmett fight, it actually could have gone to him. Josh Emmett's had a few robberies, to be honest with you. Same with Kattar fight as well, I thought. But either way, speaking of Calvin Kattar, I'm noticing a difference in the type of opponents that are beating Dan Ige and the type that aren't. Nate Landwehr, Damon Jackson, Gavin Tucker. And Landwehr stayed in there, but his chin's so high sometimes. And he does get dropped in fights. Type of guy that's probably going to lose to Ige. Damon Jackson, same thing. Type of guy that's probably going to lose to Ige. Gavin Tucker, same thing. Type of guy that's probably going to lose to Ige. Edson Barboza, I thought he beat Dan Ige. We're a long time removed from that Barboza and the Barboza that fought Lerone Murphy. I think you got to kick at range. I think you got to be dynamic to beat Lerone Murphy. You've got to be a Diego Lopez. You've got to be a Yair Rodriguez. That's who's going to beat Lerone Murphy in this division. I don't think it's Dan Ige. He's too simple. He's stocky. He can't catch you at the end while you're leaning back away from something. He catches you going into stuff. And that's why he beats wild guys. That's why he gives guys like Josh Emmett problems who are swinging with everything to take him out. And he gives Lopez some problems as the fight goes on. He's very difficult to finish, Dan Ige. But when you look at people that have beaten him, TKZ just did a really technical breakdown on Dan Ige and beat him. You know? Movsar Evloev did the same thing, but mixed it in with some good grappling as well. Calvin Kattar just did a really technical breakdown of Dan Ige. Lerone Murphy is that guy. Lerone Murphy is the typical, cut and dry, not great anywhere, but good everywhere, UK fighter. That's kind of the way it is, right? Like, he'll mix in grappling. He'll probably hold Ige against the cage a bit in some rounds, need to fire a few times, separate, and then he might land an elbow off the break in the clinch. Who knows? Like, some wild UK stuff, you know what I mean? And then, jab at range again, and he's moving. Now a low kick. Now a jab to the body. Now he's moving. Ige swings and misses. Oh, they're in the clinch. Lerone Murphy landed a knee on the break and separated. Oh, he shot a takedown. It didn't work. Over-unders. Couple punches to the body. Knees to the thigh. Shucks him off. Drags him down against the cage a bit. Ige's back up with a few knees to the thigh afterwards. Murphy throws a combo on the break at the end of the round, securing the round for himself. It's the best case scenario to win a round type of style that a lot of UK fighters in the lower divisions come with. I think that beats Dan Ige 8 times out of 10, 7 times out of 10. Could he finish Lerone Murphy? Yes. I just don't think he's dynamic enough. He's got power in his hands, but I need like a wild guy that's going to throw it all out there and jump to the back of Lerone Murphy. That's why Gabriel Santos gave him problems on short notice in his debut. He pounced on the back of Lerone Murphy, throwing heavy stuff at range, being dangerous, keeping Lerone Murphy's otherwise calculated and cerebral style out of the way. Because now we're in a chaotic fight, and it's going to be whoever goes first wins, and whoever makes a mistake type of fight wins. Kalibau was doing all right, but he's very dynamic, rangy, picks his shots weirdly on the outside. Edson Barboza, dynamic, stop throwing kicks. I think if he threw more kicks, he probably could have got it done against Lerone Murphy, but what does Murphy do? He mixes in takedowns in the moments where he needs to, holds against a cage in the moments where he needs to, tallies up the points on the scorecards in the moments that he needs to. Yeah, I'm going to go with Lerone Murphy here. I'm going to go Lerone Murphy by decision, 29-28. Maybe a random scorecard goes out there for Ige, but Murphy will have won it. We move on. Oh, I've got to pick these fights. Robert Whittaker versus Khamzat Chimaev. There is an idea that is Khamzat Chimaev. Then there is a reality of Khamzat Chimaev. And the reality is a lot more approachable to beat than the idea of Khamzat Chimaev. I'm going with Robert Whittaker. I know what you're thinking. Dude, Whittaker crumbles in fights like these. And you're damn right he does. And that's the argument for Chimaev fans and people that think Chimaev is going to win this one. Dude, Whittaker, under pressure, he don't do well. That's always the thing against Whittaker. Like, if you put pressure on him, you'll be able to get it done. Or if you just try and overwhelm him, he'll break. He's a bitch. He plays Skyrim on the weekdays. He's got kids. You know what I mean? Like, there's a human in there, goddammit. You know, leave him alone. You start trying to stick up for Whittaker and start an anti-bullying protest through some fights. You know what I mean? But I think he'll survive Chimaev's grappling early. That's what I think. He's a great wrestler. And I know, he's only been to like Commonwealth Games in Australia and national tournament here and there and does great in that. That's never going to compete with this Dagestani Chechen style of grappling. Volk Makhachev. Sure, positions were given up, but where do we go from there? You know? I think Whittaker's going to be able to survive a round. And if he does survive a round, we got 5 rounds of this. This ain't a 3-rounder, Chimaev. You ain't getting out of it that easily, bud. And Chimaev knows it's 5 rounds. That's important as well. So when he's on the back of Whittaker and he's trying to pour it on and Whittaker's scrambling and doing all the right things that a lot of, I'm just going to say it, a lot of these Australian fighters do. They do the right things. When someone has their back, when someone's going for their back, when someone's trying to drag them down, when someone's trying to get dominant position over them, they just seem to be able to escape those positions and work to the next best one. Volkanovski does it. JDM does it. Who else is a really good example of that but is in New Zealand? Kai Kara France does it as well. Really calm, gets people off of his back, survives, looking at the clock while fighting one hand on. He'll be stood up against the cage with Pantoja on his back, or maybe not Pantoja, but other fighters that are on his back, and he'll just be looking up and, all right, I'm fighting hands. Askarov's on my back. No big deal. Similar style. Dagestani. Grappling. That sort of Sambo style of grappling. All aggression. Get him down. Get dominant position early. I'm going to go Whittaker. And then after that first... Listen, you're not picking, can Khamzat Chimaev win this fight? In my opinion. That's why I'm leaning towards Whittaker. God, I'm going to be tense and nervous for Whittaker leading into this. But you're not picking, I wonder if Khamzat Chimaev can win this fight. What you're saying is, does Whittaker win this fight or does Chimaev finish him in the first 2 rounds? That's got to lean you one way or the other, is it not? I think that's got to lean you one way or the other. And I think it's got to lean you somewhat towards Whittaker. You know? Majority of people are leaning Whittaker. 54% on Tapology. They're actually taking him by finish, and I get that because I think it's probably going to happen late. I think we'll probably see a Whittaker 3rd or 4th round TKO. And I think Chimaev, he's a fucking 2-1 threat. They got to stop. Oh my God, they got to stop. It's just too tempting. I've got to go Whittaker. I've got to go Whittaker as the underdog. I think he'll stay alive early. I think Chimaev won't shoot as early on Whittaker. That's what I don't think. I think he'll try and... Because, let me put it this way. Whittaker's more approachable to try and put away on the feet in the first round than an Usman. You know? Against Burns, he just went straight for the takedown on Burns early. Against Usman, he went straight for the takedown early. When Chimaev thinks there's a chance he can get a KO on the feet early, which there is against Whittaker, which is why I think he might try this a bit more, he will try the KO early. Meerschaert. I'm going to go out there and I'm actually going to put some heat on him early. He's not going to KO me in the first 30 seconds. If they don't have a chance of KOing Chimaev in the first minute or 30 seconds, he will engage on the feet a bit. You know? He will try that out a lot more. I just think Chimaev's performances compared to the hype of Chimaev that we see in these edits that I keep noticing on Twitter are very different things. And I'm done with the young up-and-comer thing. He's 30. He's 30 years old. You know? He won't have fought for a year. He was supposed to fight in June. He pulled out. Why? Illness. Again. It's going to be on his lungs. A lot of people keep saying that. Oh, he pulled out to this and he had lung this. I'm not going to say the word because it instantly gets videos demonetized on YouTube. But it's in his lungs still. You know, he's splitting up all this. I think there's blood in his mucus and all this type of stuff. Like, the guy's pulled out of a lot of fights. Pulled out against Usman. Well, he didn't pull out against Usman, sorry. Usman stepped up in place of Costa. But he ended up, you know, missing weight against Diaz because he wasn't going to make it, and they made him come in at 185, and he ended up beating Kevin Holland, but Holland's grappling is... Roman Dolidze's effectively grappling in round 1 against him. Great against Li Jingliang. Hey, Li Jingliang. That ain't aged great. And then you look at his wins. Let me read you Chimaev's finishes early. And you tell me if any of those names sound like Robert Whittaker to you. Kevin Holland. Kevin Holland. Li Jingliang. Gerald Meerschaert. Get this. Rhys McKee at middleweight. John Phillips. Took him to the second round. I know it was a younger Chimaev at 26. When Whittaker was, I believe, fucking near championship level around that time. I don't even think that's far off. How old's Whittaker and when did he get to the top? 33 years old now. And he got to the championship when? In 2017? 7 years ago? And he's 33? Yeah. You know? John Phillips survived a round. Not a complete, I get it, a different Chimaev. And he had Usman in trouble. He survived. Whoa, you see him take down Burns? Yeah, Burns got back up and survived. You know? It's not like I'm hating and I'm like, no, this guy's KOing everyone, but he won't do it to Whittaker. If he was destroying Usman and, he put Usman away, maybe there'd be some argument, well, Usman took it on short notice, but no, he didn't destroy Usman. I thought he lost. He's very lucky to get a 10-8 round in the first. Fair play, get a 10-8 round, all good. I think they should be given out a little bit more generously anyway. I'm just saying we've seen more dominant rounds not be given a 10-8. But he didn't finish Usman. Usman, wobblestone, cobblestone knees. What's Lucas Tracy say? Fucking old man, geriatrically stumbling around the place, you know? Still managed to put hands on Chimaev. I know Chimaev broke his hand in a fight, but there's always something with him. Chimaev didn't look good that performance, but you guys, his training camp, a lot of stuff happened. Well, he didn't look good in that one either. You guys broke his hand, round 1. Didn't look good in that fight. Whoa, guys. He had AIDS. Yeah, I mean, like, there's always something. So why wouldn't there be something in this one? You know? Guys probably got swine flu going into this. Like, I'm trusting in Whittaker. You know, he has looked good. Duplessis is a beast of a man that doesn't slow down like Chimaev does. So I don't see the same second round finishing potential as I do from Chimaev, as we see from Dricus Duplessis. And I think Whittaker's ready for the scrap. Look at the previous opponents that Whittaker's faced and tell me he ain't ready for intensity and pressure. Chimaev's not going to wheel kick him in round 1 like Costa did, by the way. And I think Costa could probably do well against Chimaev as well, because I don't see him getting finished early. I think the fact that this is 5 rounds is horrible for Chimaev. 3-rounder, maybe I'd pick him. Maybe he'd win the first dominantly. Secure a draw if he didn't get finished. And then he gets the second close. And then Whittaker wins the third, but it's not enough. The 4th and 5th being there make me terrified for Chimaev. The fact that this is in the humidity of Abu Dhabi, I don't like that for Chimaev either. It's in the daytime. Don't like that for Chimaev. I'm going to go with Robert Whittaker getting this one done. TKO. 4th round. Finishes Chimaev, who's gassed out. Starts putting his head down and scrapping while Whittaker's popping and moving a lot more and being a lot lighter on his feet. And I actually think Chimaev's going to swing a lot more on the feet early as well, trying to go for Whittaker. But look at the previous opponents. Ikram Aliskerov, dangerous guy looking to go out there and bully Whittaker early and put him away. Paulo Costa, dangerous guy looking to go out there and bully Whittaker early, put him away. Duplessis, Before Duplessis, he had fought Vettori. No danger of being finished ever. Adesanya, gonna low kick you at range. Who has finished Whittaker before, I get it, but gonna low kick you at range and win a robbery decision against you. Gastelum ain't gonna put you away early. You know? Cannonier could have. But not really. When's the last time we saw a first round finish from Cannonier? He's quite cerebral. Same with, when's Darren Till's gonna put you away early? No, he's gonna fucking slightly lose to you and then he'll be the guy that slightly lost to you. All respect to Darren Till, but that's just, he'll make it close. Darren Till's, no matter the comp, he'll make it close and that's his performance. You know, he's just not quite. I'm going to go with Robert Whittaker. I think he's primed and ready for this over his last two performances. And I think he'll get this one done. He's been active. This is the last shine of his prime. 33 years old. He's been around for a long time. Yeah, I think he's going to see a lot coming from Chimaev. I don't see Chimaev catching him with something you don't see coming. I'm going with Whittaker getting this one done. And I don't think Chimaev will shoot until about the minute 30 mark. That's what I think. I think there'll be some exchanges on the feet where he'll get close and then he'll shoot. I think Whittaker's great takedown defense. Amazing. So I'm going to go with Whittaker getting this one done. We move on. Ilia Topuria versus Max Holloway. I'm going with Ilia Topuria to win this fight by decision. And I think Holloway is going to have moments later on and people are going to complain. Oh, yeah, you gloat all you want, dude. Holloway was whooping you in round 5. That's the narrative I hear. Are you telling me you can't hear that narrative too? I hear it echoing around the streets of Honolulu, Hawaii. Okay? I hear it. The cope of Twitter. Talking all that trash. Look at him cowering away in round 5, shooting for his life. Brendan Allen, Chris Curtis. No, I'm joking. Not that style of fight. I think he will probably drop Holloway. I think he'll hurt Holloway in moments. And that's going to get him rounds. Like, I can see Holloway outstriking him in round 1. And then towards the end of round 1, Ilia cracks him with something. And Holloway goes Poirier rematch mode. And everyone's like, oh, no. And he's like barely whiffing on the follow-up shots as Holloway braces and keeps his distance. And then like a spinning back kick on the spot from Holloway keeps Ilia where he's meant to be and stops the aggression, and then everything calms down. But Ilia's got the round. He was outlanded by 7 significant strikes. Who cares? He had him on skates. Did you not see Holloway? I'm reading the narratives that are going to come from this fight. Ilia's got the boxing that we ain't seen at featherweight before, man. Arnold Allen didn't have this level of boxing and he gave Holloway some competitive issue. Not that much competitive issue. Yair Rodriguez didn't have this level of boxing. He had some kicks, some good low kicks. Does he time them that well on Volk? Not like Ilia was. Ilia was eating some low kicks from Volk. He was chewing up the calf of Volk. Yair was in moments as well, but, you know, Volk couldn't take down Ilia the way he could catch and take down Yair, which inevitably changed the fight. Yair's a wimp on the ground. He's malnourished. Ilia Topuria ain't going to be taken down. And I'll get into the prototype of people that beat Holloway, but that's just how I see this fight going, man. First 2 rounds, Ilia's going to crack and hurt Holloway. And I think it will change the way Holloway fights, because it does. Even though Holloway is known tough, he's going to walk through everything. He's not been that fighter in so long. TKZ kind of got him all wide-eyed and backing up. People forget, man. Am I mistaken in saying that TKZ kind of cracked him at one point? And I know he hurt TKZ and TKZ's chin. He even admitted himself on the Jackson podcast. He even said, my chin's not the same anymore, I'm retiring. And that's actually the reason why he said he retired, is because he just knew he couldn't take punishment anymore the same way. But TKZ landed some shots early in that fight. Holloway outlanded him and landed the better shots and even dropped him in moments and nearly had a dash choke at one point. But there were moments where TKZ landed and all of a sudden it's Holloway's got to back up and go all wide-eyed, and it doesn't look good for the judges. But he still gets the round because TKZ's not Ilia. An older TKZ is not Ilia Topuria, man. Holloway's got a short reach for his side, and Gaethje's trash! Gaethje's got plot armor. How did Michael Johnson not finish him after landing those shots that wobbled him? How, I ask you? How? How? How did Chandler not land the follow-up shot that finished him in round 1 after wobbling him that badly and having him do the herky jerk? You know? How? How does Gaethje survive those moments? I don't think Gaethje's that good of a technical fighter. And that's why I picked Holloway to school him and finish him late in the fight. You know what I'm saying? I know all. I don't, because I've been having shit predictions other than the big fights. But this is a big fight. And I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. He's the prototype to beat Max Holloway. He will land punishing shots to get respect from Holloway that will change the way he's able to pressure in the fight. Poirier did it early in the fight. That gave him the first 2 rounds. Arnold Allen did it early in the fight, and that gave Arnold Allen the ability to stay 5 rounds in the fight and not get finished later on. Let's face it. Leading into that fight, Allen was suspect. Can we be honest? Allen, I picked he would have a good fight with Holloway, but he wasn't supposed to. If we're being honest. Like, people knew Arnold Allen was good, but there was a lot of red flags on Allen's resume. You know, you go through Allen's career and you see, oh, well, you know, the Calvin Kattar fight, Calvin got injured in the fight. Allen looked good and he looked like he was in control, but he got injured. Allen just, like, barely beat Chikedze, who's good, but he's Giga Chikedze. Okay? It's Giga Chikedze. Levels. Dan Hooker was coming down. He was, you know, terrible weight cut. Wasn't the same guy as he was at lightweight. None of the toughness that he normally has. Sadiq Yusuff had a great fight with Arnold Allen. I've watched it back in the build-up to this, just to remind myself. Sadiq Yusuff arguably won about 70% of that fight. He won the 3rd round clear, and he was doing better than Allen in the 1st and 2nd round, but Allen hurt him in moments, and that gave Allen the fight. The Nick Lentz fight was just too close. I didn't like how close it was. It was way too close. And that was in 2020, you know? He fought Holloway at the start of 2023. That's not that far removed. Ilia has the power to get respect to where he can't be bullied early or soon enough for Holloway to get the momentum that he needs to walk him down and eventually finish him. Holloway isn't that fighter anymore, and he knows it because he's a lot more sensible. And when Holloway feels a punch that he knows can hurt him, he don't do that shit. You know, Gaethje, he started playing a lot more at range. Arnold Allen, he started playing a lot more at range. Even Volk. And Volk's not the most powerful guy. He's not known for his one-punch power. Volk had the power to get respect from Holloway. The 3rd fight, here's another thing I want to talk about with Ilia Topuria. You don't see the guy bleed. You know? I'm gonna look back at, like, the Ilia Topuria, Josh Emmett photos at the end. Did he have any cut on his face in that fight? I don't think he did. Like, I think he ended that fight with his face very well intact. No damage to him. What about the Volkanovski fight? Let me just check the imagery of the face at the end of that. No cuts on him. No marks on him. The guy don't mark up. He's got no scar tissue on him. And I'm not just saying, oh, he's got no scar tissue on him. Holloway's not going to win. Holloway has a ton of it. You know? The cut against Poirier, right down the center of the eye. I thought that was the one that Volkanovski opened up. Turns out it was a different one that he opened up on Holloway's face. And now Holloway's got that to worry about. And I'm just thinking, if Ilia catches him in a way where Holloway's eyes are starting to swell up again, Holloway's face is starting to cut, blood's getting in his eyes a little bit, he's not going to be the same level of guy that was able to just smooth sailing, move through the fight with Gaethje, where he did eye poke him twice early on, by the way. But he's not going to be that level of guy. Scar tissue, advantage Ilia Topuria in terms of the damage that's going to be caused on the face. Remember, the judges ain't going to care. If it's a competitive round, they ain't going to care. Well, that was just the Poirier cut that Ilia reopened up. They see a cut that's terrible looking on Holloway's face. That's enough to give Ilia a round, even if he's outlanded. That's just how I'm seeing this. There's too many advantages to Ilia here. Younger, fresher. Something else I want to talk about, man. Max Holloway had a few terrible weight cuts in a row. And I'm going to try and find out the timing of those weight cuts real quick while I talk to you now, because this is another thing I want to talk about. He was just at lightweight and he sensibly bulked up to lightweight not that long ago. 6 months ago. Okay? He was just at lightweight. Not sure where his career would go next, probably for about a month afterwards. Now he's re-navigating his body down to featherweight. I would have liked Holloway to have taken the Ilia fight when Holloway was in featherweight shape, knew his future career was going to be at featherweight, and had stayed at featherweight for a while and had been back at that frequency, you know? But now he's been up to lightweight against a much slower guy in Gaethje, while Ilia's been in there with fast, super high frequency striker Volkanovski. The change of their feng shui going into this is going to be Ilia's keeping a flat line. He's fighting featherweight speed guys. I just came off of slow, big, dumb Gaethje. I'm Holloway in this case. And now I'm going down to fight Ilia. That's an advantage early for Ilia Topuria as well. So I'm going to say a damage-based decision for Ilia Topuria. And let me find out what was the last time when he moved up to lightweight. It was before the Ortega. Remember when the Ortega fight got cancelled because he nearly died during the weight cut? That was when he tried to fight Khabib, failed the weight cut, but he'd tried to fight at lightweight, and then he came back down to featherweight. Too many clues. There's too many clues. Volk schooled him in the trilogy, man. Yair nearly beat him. Watch back the Yair fight. He nearly beat him. Kattar got schooled. Don't get me wrong, Kattar got schooled. He landed so much. You know, a lot of people forget, man. I think I've said that a lot of times here. Max Holloway landed a 455. Max Holloway landed 455 strikes on... Jesus Christ. That is actually a crazy number, huh? But in round one, Calvin Kattar landed 24 shots. 75% of these to the head. 20 in the second round, 29 in the third, 34 in the fourth, and 26 in the fifth. He was still landing on Holloway. There were moments in that fight where Holloway was doing his thing, and I was like, oh my God, this is crazy. Holloway's doing his thing. Bang! Kattar would crack him with a straight right hand down the pipe. Ilia's better. Ilia is better! He's good enough to make up the difference for all the other featherweights that haven't quite been good enough to beat Holloway, and then some. And we ain't even got into the most golden rule of picking a Holloway fight. Never pick him to beat a shorter opponent. Never! He does terrible against shorter opponents. He has to stand wide against shorter opponents. This is the whole argument I had about the Gaethje fight. I was like, dude, he's going to be elusive on his feet because he doesn't have to stand so wide like he did. He's going to be more like the Yair fight or the Allen fight, who stand quite tall and up on their toes. Holloway's going to be able to stand up on his toes and move laterally and dance around Gaethje. And he's going to be able to deal with the leg kicks way better because of it. Why did Volk chew up Holloway's legs 3 fights in a row? Why? Because Holloway's fighting a shorter opponent when he ain't got a long reach, so he has to lower his base, widen his stance. He can't move as well because he has to be somewhere near their level. So he can be firing off the shoulder and catching them and be in their range. If he's too tall, he's going to get caught over the top of things. So he stands low, spreads his base wide, limits his movement, leaves him open for the low kick, which Ilia showed great effectiveness with against Volkanovski in their fight. And Volk looked good. Even though he got chinned and, maybe his chin was compromised, he looked good in that fight with Ilia. But Volk was up at lightweight and he come back down to featherweight against... and that's not a good look. I'm going to go with Ilia Topuria. And I actually think he's going to rattle Holloway a bit in the build-up. So that's what I'm going to say. Ilia Topuria. First round, Holloway's looking good. Oh, he's doing his thing. Gang! No! Holloway, no! Back up! Ilia's going after him. Landing shots, but Holloway's taking it and he's good and he survives the round and everything calms down again and we all go back to what we're doing and saying, okay, we got a fight on our hands. Second round, Ilia's landing more. He opens up a cut on Holloway's face. Holloway outlands him. He's kicking the body. He's going low kick for low kick with Ilia. Here's a less powerful, let's say. He's landing shot for shot with the boxing with Ilia. Ilia lands bigger shots. Holloway lands more. Ilia cuts him open. They give round 2 to Ilia. The cut's bothering Holloway in round 3. I don't like it. Now he's getting cracked a bit more often. But Ilia is starting to show signs of slowing down. But he gets a takedown at the end of the third while Holloway's brushing away the blood from his eye. No, this isn't looking good. Ilia's on top. Holloway right back up. Ilia threw a couple punches at the end of the round as Holloway was getting back up and they separate. Round 3's Ilia's, but it's close. Round 4, Ilia's doing good early. He's keeping momentum. He reopens the cut on Holloway that they've tried to patch together in the corner. Holloway starts to do good at the end of round 4. What's going on? Holloway's still in it. Is he going to be able to pull it off in round 5? Round 5, Ilia starts strong for the minute. But then he's slowing. Ilia's human. He overswings. He's got too much power for his own good. And Holloway's still there. Holloway's going for Ilia. Holloway's still throwing spinning back kicks and stuff like that. I think that will land for Holloway, by the way. The on-the-spot spinning back kick. But now round 5, we're in the middle of it. Holloway's starting to put together combinations. But Ilia cracks back and stops the momentum for a second. Holloway's pouring it on. He's landing combinations. But Ilia cracks back and stops him for a second. You know, another low kick from Ilia. He shoots a takedown. He doesn't get it. He's getting desperate. He's pussying out. He's trying to hold Holloway against the cage. 2 minutes left on the clock. Holloway separates. He's winning the exchanges now. A minute left on the clock. He's pouring it on. Ilia cracks back. They're going back and forth. Holloway's winning at the end. He points down to the canvas. Ilia shoots a takedown like a bitch. Boo. Fuck Ilia. He said he would point to the ground and scrap out with Holloway, and he didn't. Fuck him. What a bitch. Ilia's hand get raised. Fake champ. We don't like you. I can so see this. This is so MMA community in 2024. This is what it's all about. We don't like you. Fake fucking champ. You said you would dog it out with him. You bitch. You were panic shooting takedowns in the 5th round. You survived. Well, if you think about it, Ilia kind of just survived Holloway. This is what I'm hearing from this. Like and subscribe. Thank you for watching. Toodle pip. I'll see you later. Goodbye.